Hey folks, I have a video. This might be slightly long because it took me a while to do this, but I NixOS 2305 is coming out pretty soon, and so far I've been studiously avoiding knowing anything about Flakes, NixOS Flakes, and NixOS Flakes are a way to get more pure reproducibility in your builds, and I don't really need that so much because I don't, I'm just a hacker. So, but given that it is the way of the future, I figured this was a good excuse to start to learn about them. And so I did this already. Now, because this video is probably going to be a little bit long, I want to let you know right up front that in the description there will be a link to this script, which tells you more or less exactly what to do, and you might want to just skip to that if you're not a linear person. But I will describe my steps, and I think what I'm going to do is I've already done this once before, but I'm going to sort of start from scratch and convert an existing configuration set, Nix configuration set that I have for a number of systems to use Flakes. And I might go ahead and refer to the one that I already did during this thing, but more or less it'll be as if I'm doing this from scratch so people can see it. So currently I have an Etsy NixOS, that Etsy NixOS configuration.nix in my repository that looks something like this. This is not the Flakes configuration. This is the normal non-Flakes configuration. And it does a bunch of stuff in there. This is actually a symlink to a file inside of Etsy NixOS hosts think Nix52. That's the host name of this system. So if I go there, this is the same file. So, and inside of this file, I configure, I have configuration that tells Nix that this is a ThinkPad P52 system. And I also happen to include this file over here that has my home manager configuration and my user in it. And then the rest of the stuff is sort of, it didn't need to be changed. The other stuff I had about ZFS and configuration and et cetera, kernel patching and some other stuff, but we're not really going to talk about that here. We're going to talk about the important bits. So, this is actually, this Etsy NixOS directory I have here is actually a checkout of a Git repository. So if I go to Etsy NixOS status, you can see that I'm on the master branch right now. This is where my old configuration resides currently. And it is, it looks something like this. And it got a bunch of stuff in there, but it's got a bunch of Nix files inside of this common directory, and then a bunch of Nix files in the Etsy NixOS directory, and et cetera, and these get variously included by different things. So it's fairly complex. It's not like mind bending or anything, but it's not the simplest of configurations. It configures, I think, 5 systems right now. But for this video, we're just going to talk about reconfiguring one of them, and then the process is sort of, rinse and repeat for the other one. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to get the minimum, I'd like to do the minimum amount of work to change my Git repository around such that I don't need Etsy NixOS configuration.nix, that symlink that we saw. Instead, I can have an Etsy NixOS flake.nix in my repository that describes all of my systems. Currently, on each one of the systems that I configure with this Git repository, I have a symlink that points to a different file. So on my P52, it points to ThinkNix52. On my P51, it points to ThinkNix51, et cetera, et cetera. In the Flakes regime, you can have a single file, the flake.nix file, that's the NixOS flake.nix file, that describes all your systems. And the linkage is different. We'll talk about that in a second. The linkage between what configuration you use and in particular, the host name of his system is described in the Flakes file. But I currently don't rebuild my home manager configuration separately from my NixOS configuration. When I want to make a change in my home manager configuration, I edit a file inside this repository. And then I run NixOS rebuild. And that fits my brain. Other people don't do it that way, but that's how I work. What I'd like to be able to do is, after I make the necessary changes to switch to Flakes, I want to be able to run NixOS rebuild switch -- flake and get pretty much the same result as I got before. I'm not looking to add any features or anything. It should also make this etc NixOS configuration.nix file, the symlink, irrelevant at that point. So to get started, what I did was I created a new repository or new branch in this repository, which I will do now. And we'll do git checkout -b. I'm going to call this reflake because I already have one. Flakes. I already have one named Flakes that has all the right answers in it, but we're going to start from scratch here. And so this is checkout. This is a branch of master, and in order for Flakes to work at all, I already happen to have this in here, buried in my configuration somewhere. But you have to have something like this: Nix extra options, experimental features, Nix command Flakes. That, and you also have to point your Nix packages at Nix unstable for that to work. So these two things need to be in your configuration. Mine already happen to be there, so I already have Flakes support. And then I rebuilt. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and create a flake.nix file inside of my etc NixOS directory, not in my common directory, but here, Nix. And I'm going to take the contents of this. I'll jam it in there. Okay. If there is a flake.nix in your etc NixOS directory, it presumes you want to use Flakes and ignores the old regime where there's configuration.nix. Just so you know, it's confusing if you don't know that and you sort of leave a flake.nix around and you're unaware of this behavior. You don't actually have to do -- flake here if you have a flake.nix inside your etc NixOS directory. Got it? Good. Thank you. So, note also that in order for Flakes to work at all, I think you have to check your code into your Nix stuff into a Git repository. I didn't try it outside of one, but it badly wants to be in a version control regime. And if you create a new file inside of your Git repository and refer to it in your Nix configuration, it won't work unless that file is added to the repository. The reason, well, it actually happens with flake.nix too. If I have to, in order for Flakes to be happy with files that are in your Git repository, you have to git add them. So I'm going to do git status, git add flake.nix. Okay, now let's try to run it. Now it's somewhat working. Okay, well, it failed with a different error, which is that we can't use this fetch tarball command inside of a flake-based Nix configuration. So we haven't really talked about what this thing is yet. I'm going to do that right now. Let's talk about the inputs here. So this is the flake.nix file that I just put in here, and it is only 3 lines long. It names the URLs of the 3, sort of upstream sets of packages or modules that I use. The first is Nix packages. The second is NixOS hardware, and the third is home manager. And basically, these replace any calls to like fetch tarball, or these replace channels. These replace things that you import from. If you name you name the inputs you want to Flakes, it will go fetch all those various repositories for you, and those become inputs to your Nix configuration rather than relying on channels or tarballs or whatever, or fetch from Git or stuff like that. So you'll see a lot of tutorials, I guess, or videos, or I don't know. All that I came across have something like this for Home Manager. They have that. Inputs equal. Is that? Am I missing one here? And this stanza here says use the URL home manager, GitHub Nix community home manager. The old one has the actual release on it. If you use this, it will tend to fail. Currently, I think this is a temporary bug. Mixing and matching sort of home manager version with Nix package versions is a little bit fraught at the moment. So it'll fail with something like attribute extend missing somewhere deep in the bowels of Nix packages somewhere, and it's a very confusing error. Basically, what you got to do is, for the meantime, this may be may be fixed today. Who knows? But you gotta have the same release. You want to use the same release for Home Manager as Nix packages. So you just specify the actual literal URL that points to that release. So currently we're on 22.11, so we use 22.11. Got it? Good. Okay, then the script is linked to in the description. You can see more about this error at that URL there. So, okay, so now that we took a look at the inputs, let's take a look at the outputs. So this is a function here that takes these arguments, basically the things that we defined up above, this Nix packages, NixOS hardware and home manager, it passes through to here. And then we have this NixOS configurations doodad here. Okay. And what this does is it maps a host name, in this case, think Nix52, to a configuration. And I'm going to delete this line that we added there. Let's see. Basically, it tells NixOS rebuild Flake, when I'm run on a system with host name think Nix52, this should be my configuration. And it's just important to understand that this think Nix52 name is special. It should match the host name of your system that you're trying to configure over your system. So what's nice about this is that I can just continue to add. I can manage all this all in one place, and I can just continue to add systems to this, and then check the same repository out on each one of those systems. I don't need to symlink anything in that, the configuration.nix that represents that system's configuration. It just picks it out of this list of configurations that are in flake.nix. In my original configuration.nix, we've already seen it fail. It complained about this fetch tarball thing, which is disallowed in Flakes. Can't do impure things like that inside of a Flakes configuration. What I'm doing with this fetch tarball is I'm grabbing the NixOS hardware repository from GitHub, and then I'm importing the configuration for ThinkPad P52. And we need to replace this with the sort of Flakes approved way of doing it. So what we do is over here, flake.nix. I already did it here. This in the outputs in each configuration, each system's configuration, you specify a list of modules, and these are basically the same thing as importing them inside in your Nix your Nix configuration somewhere in deep down in expression somewhere, but it's sort of the top level modules that you want to do. And this is this line right here, line 16 here, replaces the need to do, wrong, to do this. So we can get rid of this. And it also replaces the need to do this because it imports it by default. You don't need to do that anymore. The way I figured out how to do that was to look at the NixOS hardware GitHub repository, and it's not exactly obvious, but this line here, NixOS hardware, NixOS modules, blah 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 blah. It looks a little strange, but what it is actually a name that is defined inside of a flake.nix file that that the NixOS hardware people wrote. So basically, whatever system you have, you type NixOS hardware, NixOS-hardware dot NixOS modules dot, and then one of these names here, and I'll get it for you. Got it? Good. Okay. So now that I've done that, what am I trying to do here? Oh, yeah. Hosts. 52. Now we've gotten rid of that fetch tarball in there, so that shouldn't be a problem anymore. Now let's try to run. Let's try to run it. See what happens. Now remember, I don't need I could do that. I don't need to because I have flake.nix inside of my NixOS directory. Okay, so again, it is pretty cagey about where these errors are, but I'm not going to pass this show trace argument because it is fairly useless in this very lazy language to figure out where the source of the error is. But we know that it doesn't like a call to fetch tarball, so we can grab fetch tarball. Okay, so here are all the places where I have where I'm using fetch tarball. We need to replace all these places. For purposes of this video, I'm not going to think about these other hosts here because they're not these files aren't imported on the system, so we're going to ignore those. But these two, the home chrism.nix and the other one, we do need to replace. So it was very easy to take care of our home manager stuff to make it Flakes compatible. Or sorry, our NixOS hardware stuff to make it Flake compatible. It's a little more a pain in the butt to change it to make it compatible with Home Manager. We now need to appease Home Manager. In this configuration, my current configuration, I have a file inside of Home, inside of Common Home, that has configuration in it for both NixOS. This is the stuff that NixOS uses up here. This users chrism thing and Nix extra options and stuff like that. I mixed that in with Home Manager stuff because they're all related to chrism. It made sense at the time. But because of the way that the Home Manager Flakes configuration works, what we have to do is we have to separate those two things. We have to separate the NixOS configuration from the Home Manager configuration and put them in different Nix files. And we have to remove this fetch tarball here. We don't need that anymore because we're using Flakes and it knows where our Home Manager is. We don't need to tell it. And let's go back here to our flake.nix. Here's where we do the deed. All right. Now, remember I said that there's two kinds of stuff in my current Etsy NixOS common home chrism file. I'm actually going to split the contents of that file into two separate files. I'm going to actually move them inside my repository. I'm going to make a new directory here, and I'm going to let's see. I'm going to go to common home. I'm going to git move chrism nix to users. I'm going to call this user.nix. Sorry. I'm going to make dir users Chris M. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy, or I'm going to move chrism.next to users chrism user.next. Like that. Okay. Now I have a users directory. And I'm seeing old buffers here. Okay. So in here, what I want to have is only the NixOS related stuff. I'm going to also write this file to hm.nix, and we're going to change these two files to have currently they're exactly the same. The first one, user.nix, I'm going to change to only have the NixOS related stuff in it. And the second one, hm.nix, I'm going to have it to only have the home manager stuff in it. So let's do that. First thing I want to do is get rid of this fetch tarball. Need it in neither one. Don't need the imports anymore. And this is user.nix. That's a Nix related thing. That's a Nix related thing. Home manager is not. Anything under home manager we do not need anymore. Yeah? That is the NixOS related stuff related to chrism. Other one, do something similar. Get rid of the fetch tarball, get rid of the import. But instead of getting rid of the other stuff, we get rid of this stuff. And also, it's a little bit even more annoying because there's no such thing as home manager users chrism anymore, or at least if there is, it's taken care of at the top level. So we need to move all this stuff up one level like this. Some things. Let me see if this Nix reformat thing works. It does. Good. Okay. So now we've made those changes. We no longer have fetch tarball, and we have two files that represent differing things about our chrism user. Okay, all that faffing, splitting of files was in service of being able to feed this line in our flake.nix that wants to know about our home manager configuration. We can feed it just the stuff it cares about. If we try to feed it more than that, it complains bitterly. So now home manager.users.chrism equals import the stuff that's in our home manager thing, and it only deals with home manager stuff. We include the other stuff that is in our user.nix file as a separate path in our modules file, and just import it like any old thing. So now we should, in theory, we took out our fetch tarball. That's disallowed under our configuration. We should now be able to remove something from our users thing here. Oh, sorry, from our host thing, X52. That is done for us by Flake. We don't need that anymore. The rest of these things can stay. They are important for my configuration. We will have to make some changes to this common configuration.nix in a little bit, but for now, let's try to run it. Let's see what happens. Shall we? Switch. Okay. So now we get to the point where it's complaining about our foo.nix that I added to try to demonstrate that exact problem. And it's because I didn't save it after I removed it. Okay, I'll let it do its thing. Oh, okay, it doesn't know about that one. Now, this is the same problem. We have to actually add this to our Git repository in order for this to work. Git add users. Oops, I'm in the wrong directory. Git add users chrism. And I'm just going to add both files in there with that. Now let's try to rebuild again. Okay, so we now, it's the Chris M home manager configuration wants to use some of the paths that are not currently in there. So what I'm going to do is move some more stuff from my common home directory. I'm going to git move Emacs to users, git move p10k to users. I'm going to git move steam.desktop to users. I happen to know this is what it wants. And now I'm going to change some relative path declarations inside of my users HM, Chris M HM thing. I'm just going to look for any path declarations. Up one directory, up one directory, up one directory. Good. All right. Now what happens? Oops. Switch. It's getting further. It's doing things. Okay. So link permission denied. Permission denied. Okay, that's a new one for me. Huh. Oh, duh. Because I didn't sudo. And look at that. It actually finished. And I think that means that we have a working Flakes configuration. I had another problem which is not exhibited in this behavior because I actually changed it in my master configuration as well. But I used to have a file. Sorry, in my configuration.nix, I had a system package. Because of laziness on my part, I actually the Olive editor derivation that was on cache.nixos.org. Well, it actually downloaded the source and tried to compile Olive editor when I first installed NixOS, and it couldn't compile because it was broken. It was fixed in the meantime, but when that happened originally, what I did was I found an old derivation, and I can't even remember where I found it, but I found an old derivation, installed it into the NixStore, and then just pointed at it here like that. I just tried this and it worked. And I was like, okay, fine, whatever. And this didn't exist like that. That doesn't work under Flakes because it's impure. You can't refer to stuff on your own system like that, or you can't refer to stuff in your own store, rather. But when I did that, an error would happen, something like this. Built-in store path is not allowed in pure evaluation mode. So if you see this, it means that you're referring to something that is impure in your system. It's a terrible error, but I was able to figure it out. It happened to somebody else that I will here at this URL. If you go to this script, you can see it happened to somebody else with home manager related stuff and other stuff. But just know it's probably something that a derivation that you were trying to install that doesn't come from cache.nixos.org or something. You're building your own, and somehow that derivation is impure. So that's all. In my case, I was lucky because I was just able to delete it. And now Olive Editor builds in 2211, so I'm cool. All right. So now, I think I haven't actually tried this yet, but I think what I can do is, so I'm still on my reflakes branch here. I think I can remove configuration.nix. Let's try that first. And again, that's a symlink into the host directory, which is meaningless at this point if we're under a Flakes regime. I think I can now rebuild without that file being present. Indeed, I can. Excellent. And the other thing I can remove, which is excellent, I can remove is this channel. So if I switch my root user and do nix channel list. I think I can remove this NixOS channel, or yeah, Nix channel. I think the Flake will take care of that for me. Now, if I do this, I can't go back to my old configuration. So that's why I left it in there. In the meantime, it's been there the whole time. I don't know if this is going to work or not. I'm pretty sure it will. And let me just copy this in case I need to add it again. Copy that. Copy. Put it in. That's NixOS. Flake.nix. I'll just have a comment here that says removed channel. That. And now, if I list my channels, there are no channels. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Let's see if that works. Yeah, man. Awesome. So what's really good about that is that in the future, now I have no, I have I'm configuring 5 systems. I've only done this for one of them so far, this ThinkNix52 system, but I have these other 4 systems that I need to go change in a similar way to the ThinkNix52 file. But as soon as I do that, what it means is that I no longer have to maintain this symlink, this configuration.nix symlink, and it also means that when I want to upgrade to another release of NixOS, I don't have to mess around on each individual system and change that channel on each individual system. Presumably, I'll just be able to do something like 305, something like that, for both of these things. I'm not going to do that now because I'm too chicken. But presumably, that's all I need to do to upgrade to a new NixOS release, and that's awesome. That's really great. So I think that's it. This was actually shorter than I anticipated. But again, go take a look at the script if you want to. The repository that the script is in, called nixconfig here, actually has all this stuff in it. It is nixconfig. And those docs are currently wrong because they talk about the old stuff. But inside of here, if we go to either the Flakes branch, this is where this stuff is. And maybe by the time you watch this, you won't have to go into this Flakes branch. It'll probably be on the master branch as soon as I switch all my other systems over. But if you go to, in any case, if you go to the master branch, you don't see flake.nix in there, just go to Flakes branch and you'll see all this stuff that I've done in here. All right, folks. Well, thanks very much and hope you have a good one.